Well, the path for Australia to beat inflation without crushing mortgage holders is narrowing, with productivity falling and some economists now tipping the cash rate to hit 4.85%. Joining us now, Chief Market Strategist at InvestSMART, Evan Lucas. Evan, I mentioned this earlier, people coughing up their Weet-Bix this morning with that kind of number bandied about, but could it be realised?
It unfortunately could, Pete. I must admit, looking at what we look at, it would probably be a little bit too far from what the RBA is saying, considering what we saw in the GDP figures. But I would say that, one is probably locked in, and the possibility of two is there before September. I think that's the way to look at that, and that would therefore take the cash rate to 4.6 in terms of where it would sit or thereabouts. And why that's there, yesterday it was quite telling when you actually saw the speech by the governor on that narrow path. He put two charts up that really caught the whole room's attention. One was what we call unit labour costs, which is unit costs of labour less productivity versus the aggregate demand of CPI. And the correlation between them is almost perfect. And as he showed, there has been an uptick in unit costs, and therefore the uptick likely to come on CPI is very high. So that's his concern, is that we know that it's there. Then yesterday, productivity, when it came out in the GDP, you look at GDP to hours worked, it fell by 4.7% in the quarter we've just been year on year, which is the biggest fall since records began. It also therefore means that since the end of 2019, Australian productivity is actually now contracting. So we aren't actually being productive anymore. And that is what he also highlights, that until we get more productive, until we can actually show innovation, you can't just have wage growth with no better output.
And is there a quick fix? I mean, things have been stagnant for a while, and that kind of proves, doesn't it, that you can't do it quickly. This is all going to take time. So, I mean, I suppose things are just going to get worse until then, are they?
So there's the other part. Before I answer that, there is actually sort of like a sideswipe to that point. And what I mean by that is that measuring productivity in the digital age is becoming very hard. So we don't have a fully good modelling, particularly for service economies, which is what Australia is. Working from home, there's an argument actually that the efficiency of working from home has improved the productivity that we actually now have. So it's hard to make that decision, and that's what a lot of economists will point out. We may actually be more productive than we're saying, but you're right, it takes time. I mean, back in the day, it was easy. Farming's the one that everybody uses as the example, is that you could see the improvement in farming when you went from being a scenario where you moved from, people doing the land, horses doing the land, and then you went to carts doing the land and then tractors. That's more productive. So, digitization's harder.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that actually, because this might go over a lot of people's heads, and it might sound like a really dumb question. But what is productivity? How do you measure productivity?
Yeah, bingo. And that's not a dumb question, because as I just said, at the moment, most economists are grappling with that question alone. How do you measure service productivity? How do you actually see, the output for your service improve on a way that can actually be measurable, from going from having X amount of export for grain to then going the same amount of work, actually therefore got the same amount of grain plus X. That's the equation, right? That's what you're asking. So how do you do that on a service? I mean, this TV program is a great example. It is more and more efficient in terms of what you guys have been doing, but how do you measure that? And so that's not a dumb question. And that's the caveat to this answer, is that it is true we need to get more productive. It is clear that digitization is very much part of it, and the governor talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Health is another part of that. Improving health efficiency is another side of it. The other one that's hard to look at, which gets really narky and does get political, one of the inefficiencies of an economy is having an oversized public service. And a public service that isn't working. That is always measured. And there's an argument that could be part of the problem right now. But again, I'll let you debate that with the politicians you talk to. But again, that all answers that question around productivity, about making sure that we're actually generating income for the wages that we actually need.